I'm really excited with this episode. This will be our first podcast in English. I have a lot of friends ask me, why don't you do it in English? And here we are, and with a special guest, with Cauveé. Hi, Cauveé.
I am well. Cauveé is in the house. How is everybody out there? I appreciate being here.
I'm really honored to have you here. And in this episode, we'll talk about the dreamers and change makers. And you are a dreamer and a change maker. And you are the best person to talk about this subject. So, for those who don't know you, because my main audience are for Portuguese speakers, and actually, most of them, they are from the US. Can you believe it?
Wow. Awesome.
So, can you introduce yourself? Talk about you and what make you be a change maker.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, apologies to everyone. I do not speak Portuguese. I wish I was speaking both languages. I will be learning. It is I told you, when you came on my podcast that I was planning to relocate to Buenos Aires or at least explore it. So that will be coming soon. And maybe we could do it again when I could talk in, Portuguese fluently. But I am Cauveé and known as the inspiration engineer. So it makes it really difficult to talk about myself because it's not like my go-to way. But with that stated, as an inspiration engineer, I found myself, Sandra, where I didn't fit the norm. There's this very common philosophy, do your one thing, right? That's a very common thing that a lot of people agree with. And if you're a person that can master skills quickly, like there's another saying that says, right, the more value you have is the more value you can offer to the marketplace, and to have more, get more skills, right?
Exactly.
So I was in a weird place. I was an audio engineer. I was a songwriter, singer, beat producer, right? On the business side, I was a salesperson. Then I was a life coach. Then I was a strategist and a marketer.
So you were everything.
I wasn't everything, but I was a lot of things, and I was doing a lot of things extremely well. So, I use a lot of analogies. We play basketball here, like that's one of our big. And so you have a Dennis Rodman, right? And all he does is get rebounds. That's all he does. And then you've got a Draymond Green who does a lot of things very well. So principally, right, in the principle of that, you don't have to niche down. When it comes to communicating a message, it might be easier to explain if you do that. It's better to build systems one at a time versus trying to systemize all of that. But that was where I was in this situation. So I came up with 10 titles and I was like, I don't even know what I am, to be honest. Like, I'm all these things, I don't know how to communicate. So I had a community of about 1,000 people at the time. And I was like, guys, like, I'm struggling with this. Like, I've got all these titles, and I told you as well that I had, chief inspiration officer and all these different things. And I was like, that doesn't really resonate with me. So long story short, we went from 10 titles down to 5 titles down to 2, and then the community polled and voted, and they were like, you're the inspiration engineer, and boom, we was off to the races. And the last thing I'll say that was really interesting with my story is I was given a parable by God. I had been awake for 36 hours straight. I was exhausted as you can be. And normally I'll go to sleep with like a TV on, like watching some like Family Guy or Bob's Burgers or some kind of like nonsense to where my mind can just, tap out and fall asleep. This day, I didn't want any like light. I didn't want my phone on. I didn't want my TV on. I was like, I need to pass out. So I'm laying in bed, right? And the analogy that I would give you to make it make sense is if you're familiar with Niagara Falls, which is a huge waterfall, Google it for anybody that Niagara Falls is amazing, right?
Yeah.
It would be like God would put a cork on Niagara Falls, right? And in my mind, moved the cork and was like, let there be ideas. And when the cork moved and Niagara Falls started flooding my mind with ideas, the more excited I got, the more awake I became. And I was just like, I was jazzed on energy. And he gave me this parable. He said, imagine if Tony Robbins and Drake had a baby, I would be the baby. Like, that's what I would be doing. And so, I've been telling people that for like since 2016. And it always gets a laugh. always gets a laugh. And then people are like, well, what does it look like? And it's like, well, if you look at the inspiration engineer, you look what I do, then you'll understand. And the last little piece I'll say, when it comes to change makers and dreamers, people who make change break rules, not laws. I didn't say laws. They break rules. So I have a community of lane creators. That's what we do. We create our own lane. I am the only inspiration engineer. If you Google that, I'm going to come up. That's it. There is not a single person out there that has that title or does what I do. So we want to be innovative. We want to be creative at the right time to be able to innovate in that way and to be able to create our own lane. So that's a little bit about, how I arrived at doing what I do. And I haven't explained what I do yet, but that's a little bit of background on the title and me getting to this point.
So, what makes a dreamer a change maker?
That's a really powerful question, right?
Because
The first thing
everyone is a dreamer, right?
I was
We all
just about to
dream,
say, I was just
but
about to say that.
none of us act or do something to change things, and especially to change ourselves.
Well, here's something interesting, right? Me and this girl Jasmine, we were really trying to figure out a way that we could be together, right? Her goal, her goal was to be a mother. That was it. And when I say that, I mean like that was it, like belittling that. I mean, like that was the goal, right? And that's a phenomenal goal. That's what she wanted to do. I'm not at the place where I'm ready to have kids right now, so it didn't work. Like that's your goal. So I want to first and foremost say, like, you can be a change maker in your home. You can be a change maker in your neighborhood. You can be a change maker at a smaller level, right? Because everybody touches a person or reaches a person and can impact a person. You can do that. In itself is a change maker. Be a person that makes everybody smile every single day. You are a change. A lot of people do that, right? That's a change maker right off. But what I mean and what I'm saying is some people have more of a grandiose vision. And my vision continued to expand. So people that really create change, there's a commonality of things that I see change makers do. So everyone, as you said, is a dreamer, right? The number one thing is they never lose touch with that imagination or that ability to be unique, be different, and tap into the vision, tap into the dream, right? A lot of dreamers we are all surrounded by the 85%. Call the 85%. I'm glad you asked. 85% of people hate their job. They can do something that they hate just to make money. We are surrounded by mediocrity and average. That's what it is. So, being that we are surrounded by mediocrity and average, and this is for everybody damn near worldwide, people, the dreamers, you shouldn't dream. You shouldn't dream. Be in this box that I want you to be in. Do what is normal. Do what is common, quote unquote. Sorry, I hit my mic. I got excited. But do what is common. So another thing that dreamers and change makers do, or dreamer to a change maker, is a dreamer decides that he, she, or they is not going to conform because they were told to. I'm not going to just do what you told me to do just because, unless I agree with it or I align with it, right? Number three, and this has evolved, right? Number three, people that create change primarily want to make an impact on people, usually. And it's usually a positive impact of some sort, usually. Now, somebody who is a celebrity, film, like an actor, actress, a musician, or what have you, do they create change? Is it about positive impact? Is it? So we need to start exploring some of these deeper questions. And what I've come to find is you can create change by inspiring, you can create change by educating, you can create change by entertaining. All three of those things create change, right? And the last thing that I'll say that comes to mind in this very moment is they share their love and their passion with the world, which creates a ripple. And some people do it by intention, like I have a vision and I'm going to do this. Other people like Martin Luther King or a Nelson Mandela, and I'm just naming
Mhm.
off people that we know some of their stories that went through this sacrifice. There's a lot out there that are put in a situation not by intention, but they still made a decision that I'm going to stand by my values. I'm going to stand by my beliefs, and you're not going to move me, and created change in that way by their actions. Those are the things that I see that change makers do day in, day out.
But that takes self awareness and be ready for people's judgments.
Yeah, but I think if we focus on someone else's perspectives or their judgments, our focus is in the wrong. We need to redirect our focus, right? And another thing that I just thought of, one other, fifth would be change makers are extremely studious, right?
Mhm.
In order to get good habits, good routines, good practices, you've been a student. You were studious of someone. You learn mastery in some area of life based on someone that you studied, right? However, again, if we're focusing our intention, our actions, what we do around how the world is going to receive us, or our family's going to receive us, or our parents, right? Then you're only, and this is my belief, this is my opinion, you're only limiting your possibility because majority of people are not going to align with what you want to do. Like that's just facts. So those are the things that I've experienced, not right, wrong, or indifferent.
All of us, actually. When we get to know ourselves, the true self, and we act on that direction, we are change makers, even if it is only in ourselves, around ourselves, in our life. And that's the most important. If each one of us do that, can you imagine the change that we can do everywhere?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing. It's amazing. And what would it be the biggest challenge when we are on this journey? Because this is we're talking about a journey. Okay,
Yes.
we don't become a change maker quickly, instantly. Okay, this is a process,
Yes.
day in and day in and day in of self discovery. Uh, for you, what are the biggest challenge on this journey of self discovery, of self awareness?
It's funny not to do a plug, but I'm right now finishing my book, and in this book, it's all about navigating really the ups and downs business or to build a personal brand or to on this journey of self discovery. That's one of the primary concepts or topics in the book. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is you have to be resilient. You have to
Mm,
be resilient. Your vision, your dream is going to look a certain way. Most people do not have the resources, or life is there's external forces, whatever that might be or whatever that looks like, that are in that moment against you, or they're it's giving you some resistance. It doesn't come easy, right? So when you're having to sacrifice, when life is punching or kicking you in the stomach, and you're dealing with all the pressure from life, whether that's financial pressure, emotional pressure, physical pressure if you're in the gym. I mean, there's different pressure that life is going to throw at you. Like that's what it is. And your ability to decide to still move forward, resiliency, while dealing with all of those external pressures. That's a big part of it. For my journey, Sandra, and I want to tell this for any arrogance or ego, but just so that we have some context, right? My story is very different. And I think it would be a beautiful thing if your audience was able to hear it. May I share a little bit of that story?
sure, go ahead.
So, when I first tapped into my purpose has evolved over time. My dad used to tell me when I was in seventh grade, son, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be whatever you want to be. Anything you put your mind to, you can do, right? And I went to a cousin of mine. I went to his studio, and I'm, 10 years old, 11 years old. And he takes me back into his room, and he's like, showing me all of his equipment. He lets me play with it. Like, I'm making music. I'd already been a poet. I was already doing poetry, but I started making music in his studio. And it was at that moment, Sandra, that I said, I love this, and I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I already knew, like right there, done, which is not common. That's the first thing. Like, that's not common for everybody. But for me, found it right then and there. So I go to my dad. Dad, I figured out what I'm going to do in my life. And he's excited. What is it, son? What are you going to do? I said, I'm going to be a musician. He said, you can't do that. And I went through this like, what? Yeah, shell shock. Like, what do you mean? You've been telling me all my life I can do whatever I want to do, and now I'm telling you what I'm going to do, and then you say I can't do that. That was the first thing. It was not even it wasn't this grandiose. Like right now, the purpose is to edify and uplift humanity. That's what it is. I awaken dreamers. Like that's what I do. But that, as you said, is a process. It took me a long time to get there. When I first started, my only purpose at the time was I want to make music. Like I love this, and I want other people to love this as much as I love it. And it was just as simple as that. I wasn't doing it for fame. I wasn't doing it for money. It was only about I love this and I want to share this. And when my dad said you can't do it, that was all I needed to say, okay, it's done. Like I'm going to show you that I'm going to do it, right? So I was locally famous by age 18, and we sold out our first concert of 1,209 people. Okay, wow. Now my parents were there. This is not something they read about or something that they heard about. They were there, and they still didn't want me to do this dream. Okay, now the school made 12 grand. Okay, I didn't make no money. People in the hip hop world still to this day sell drugs to get capital. Okay. And I didn't care because I was locally famous and I was a naive, young, immature 18-year-old kid. Right. So followed up to do a second concert. And I was like, I'm going to do it bigger. I'm going to do it better. I'm going to bring in dancers and, all the things. And we ended up selling 300 tickets, which is amazing if it's in Austin, Texas, which is where we live now. But it was 300 tickets out of 3,300 tickets that could have been sold. So 300 tickets in that large of an auditorium is like crickets. But the interesting thing was the production was bigger, and now my parents were fans. But at the time that they became fans, I just had my biggest failure by far. So dropped out of college, and I'm going to fast forward the story from that year, which is 2003, 2002, all the way up to 2010. I was just working a lot of jobs, mastering sales and just picking up all these different traits on sales psychology and what have you. And I was helping a lot of companies, but I was still doing my music on the side. While I was dealing with that, it wasn't until 2010 that I got my next major milestone. Cauveé, what is your next major milestone? I was working at University of Phoenix as an enrollment counselor. And there was a young woman who wanted to get her degree, and University of Phoenix was fairly like online education was not as prevalent as it is today. It was one of those like, I don't know if it's a real degree type of thing, right? And so this woman, her name was Melissa Briscoe. She had 3 children, a husband. The way it worked was if you were not in the state that approved your licensure as a teacher, you had to travel to the state to complete your externship, right? And so she had tremendous challenges, Sandra, tremendous. Her husband wasn't even supportive of the endeavor. She didn't have the finances for a $47,000 USD degree. There was tremendous amount of pressure. However, my role was to inspire, motivate, and then hold you accountable to enroll you in the class, right? And so we got her in. She decided she was going to do it. She was the only student that I had stayed with for over a year that kept in touch with me. A lot of her credits transferred in. So she was able to get her associate's degree in about a year's time and a few months. Okay. This was the biggest win that I had ever had next to that first concert. We're talking about 10 years apart or 8 years apart, excuse me, between the concert where I was famous and then this next moment. It was at that moment I felt the same love that I felt when I was in the studio, right? Fast forward again 5 more years, and in between 2010 all the way up to 2015, I was working other jobs, learning more about mastery, primarily in sales still, and doing, shows and things on the side, doing like entertainment and events and all that on the side. So fast forward 2015, I started getting into self-development. And when I started learning about self-development, I started to see the similarities between the two ecosystems
Mm-hmm.
of the music industry and the coaching industry, or the business industry, whatever verbiage people like. But what was interesting to me was this. There's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that I want to give your listeners. He says, "As to methods, there may be a million and some." He says, "The man," and I'm going to add the man or the woman that can successfully grasp the principle may successfully select his or her own method." And what I was starting to see was a new principle of way of doing things. Business owners want to be on podcasts. We're on a podcast now. Musicians want to be on the radio. It's the same principle, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
same principle. However, this world over here works way different. In the music world, it's a record deal, right? That's a shitty ass loan. I don't know if I can cuss on here. I apologize if I cannot. It's a terrible loan. It comes with owning the rights of your music, which is called your masters. It comes with owning the rights of your image. That's what it comes with. On the other side of generating capital for business, it comes with, not all the time, but just for the stereotype of this lesson, it comes with mentorship. It comes with, venture capital, and the numbers are much higher than this loan without owning, right? So a lot of companies, they're either trying to build it to be acquired, or they're, that type of strategy. Whereas music, it's like, no, we own you and you're mine. So
Yeah.
when I started to notice that, my whole point of that was getting to the change maker part, right? Because that's what you originally asked me. When I saw the two different worlds, I said, what's the point of being successful in this music world when this one plays way better? And then the final thought said, I'm going to create a hybrid between the two. Nobody was doing that. What if I start putting speeches and content on hip hop beats, or we make motivation music? It's its own trademark, which is music for entrepreneurs. It's uplifting, but it still sounds like the things that you would hear on the other side, but it's edification that is inspiring you and uplifting you as you're listening. Whereas music in the hip hop world is usually about drugs or going to the party or dancing with women and all that type of stuff. And I'm not knocking that. I like hip hop and rap and all that, but I'm just saying that's usually the topic, whereas the subject matter over here is quite different. So going back to the change makers are able to see between these different lines and see what other people don't see, and then go after that. And so I just wanted to share that with your listeners because it's such a different story, and it's taken a long time. So the last little piece is, not only does it take resilience, sometimes it takes tremendous amount of patience. I've been
Mm-hmm.
on this journey for a long time,
Join
since
the club.
2002. So that's those were the nuggets I wanted to share of that.
Yeah, join the club. You already told us a story, but can you tell us one or two more stories that really inspired you to be on this journey?
Yeah, there's a lot. Um,
Uh,
Stories that usually move me to tears, if it can make me tear up, that's a story that usually I'll hold on. But there's a lot of stories, from one of my favorite stories is Les Brown's story when he's trying to get, on the the Butterball or Mr. Butterbee, when he tells that story and he kept going back to Mr. Butterbee. It's just a funny story. It's amazing. And I like that one just because it's funny. The stories of, Bob Proctor and how he came from this very, making $4,000 a year to making $175,000 that next year, and then it took him 9 years to figure out what he did. Nine years to figure out what happened. He didn't even know what happened. He was like, "What happened?" And had to go back and learn. And what he found was he was listening. He was brainwashing himself basically with audio material to do it. It was a deeper level of programming, but that's an amazing story. Um, the Jim Rohn story, farm boy that, basically lived, like a king, but still with this little farm boy from Idaho. And I love Jim Rohn was like my grandfather. I had a grandfather biologically, but neither grandfather was grandfatherly. So Jim Rohn kind of he fit that part for me in my life with his age and the way he spoke. So that was another one. The Arnold Schwarzenegger story. I know you asked for these are popping up. The Arnold Schwarzenegger story, where he's in the
mhm.
middle of training for the Mr. Olympian, or I think it's Mr. Olympian. And while he's in the middle of bodybuilding, his father dies, and he can't even process the fact that his father passed. He has to focus on his mission to get this award, this accolade for a bodybuilder. Like, that's just powerful stuff. So stories like that, where people face these tremendous obstacles, or they just have a unique way of sharing their story. Those are the stories that really inspire me and move me most.
How can corporations learn with change makers?
I think corporations that, well, let me back up a little bit. I work
Or
for
how they
three.
can incorporate the
Yeah,
spirit of a change maker?
let's both. Let's do both. So I worked for three of the top in America. There were three of the top culture companies in America. Okay, they all had the same principles that worked. Right? They created a fun environment. They had amazing benefits. They had a culture that, for what we call it in Cauveé LLC or Cauveé Global, we talk about loving leadership. It was a leadership style that was almost like a big brother or like a mentor style, big sister, like that kind of vibe, versus like a boss, like talk at you. Nobody wants somebody to talk at them. So that's number one. You got to, first off, we got to have a good leadership,
Mm-hmm.
hierarchy system, if you will. Second, I believe that we're going to see a rise in entrepreneurs because of the freelancer market. Like, that's a thing. People go on Upwork all over the world and solicit themselves, either maybe as a primary or as a side job, but that's what they do. They solicit their work, right? And so I believe that when we, as leaders in corporations, when we allow for our team members to be entrepreneurs within our organization, right? So they're intrapreneurs. That's when you'll see change really being made, because you're allowing them to create. And I'm going to give, everybody knows this story, right? Matter of fact, we hacked it. I'm not even going to front. I hacked it because I love it. Apple, what did they do? They had one day a week where their team members could just create something. Like, it didn't even have to be about Apple. You just create some stuff. Like, go have fun and create, right? That's a principle for how people can do it, right? Now, I get it. A lot of corporations are like, well, they might make some mistakes. It might cost us a lot of money. We got to implement the training. I get it. I understand it. However, if you're thinking of what you won't get, you're thinking of the problem instead of thinking of the solution, then you're not going to be a part of that solution. And there's going to be companies that keep a startup mindset even at 1,000 employees or more, but still figure out how to keep the startup methodology, the startup frameworks, the startup principles, to where people can innovate within these different pods, if you will, or within these different micro communities within the organization. So that's what you want to do. You want to create micro communities where people can do that and thrive in that within their role. Give people opportunities to do cross functionality and play on different things. Kind of like people, they do hackathons, right? I've never done one because that's not my gift. I'm not a code person, but I'm just saying that's what they do. And when you're doing that, you're just in this flow of creation, which is how most startups that are tech companies get built. So how companies lose sight of that, or they lose a piece of that, is that they don't keep that formula as the company scales, right? And now the company's large, and now you're trying to backpedal to make it happen. And I get it; it is going to take some work. But I would encourage people to start thinking about the type of progress that they're going to make and the type of
Mm-hmm.
possibilities that they would create if they would allow their team members to be able to create what could people create that maybe the leadership has never even thought of.
And what legacy do you want to leave?
Mm.
You want to build?
Spiritual or fleshly? Because those are two different. Mm.
Choose both. Why not?
Both, yeah, both, right? So my spiritual purpose is I serve my Father. That's what I do. I bring people into the, or I don't bring, he brings, but I share. I'm an ambassador for the kingdom of heaven. Like, that's my primary purpose here, right? Like, for my beliefs or for my faith. So that's what I really do. Everything that I do falls under that category of loving on people. As
Mm-hmm.
far as the legacy, right? I have always been driven to be the best. If you're going to do something, be the best. Why not? Why not be the best at it? Right now, it's not for arrogance and it's not for ego. It's just I'm a competitive person. That's what it is. And so my one of our primary goals is to create 300 million ripples. 300 million ripples. What do you mean, Cauveé? 300 million ripples. Well, think about a wave, an ocean that, the waves just keep going. They just
Mm-hmm.
keep on going. And as we are a change maker and we start changing the way people think philosophically, right? We start implementing our strategies because I'm a strategist, I mentioned that. And people are creating change, it's going to create ripples of change. It's going to be like, oh, we thought people had to be in this sandbox, and Cauveé Global done changed the whole thing. Cauveé's in music, he's in entrepreneurship, he's got the coach, he got the university, he's got all these different things. Like I thought you had to niche down, right? That immediately changes that whole concept. So that is really what it is about me is to when I leave here, when I transition out, that people say, Cauveé was somebody who loved me. I know he loved me. He held me accountable. He was a person that pushed me. He really wanted the best for me. He really wanted to support me. And he wanted me to become the best version of myself and reach my full potential. And that's the fleshly part of my legacy.
That's great. And just to finish, what's happiness for you? What it is to
Hmm.
be happy?
Some would say progress. I think that's too vague. Happiness is to me doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want, and being no barriers to entry, being not bound. You can't do something because you are bound by a barrier. That's a bad place to be. You can create an ecosystem around you, laughter, love, joy, peace, fun, right? Giving. You can do all the things. And to me, that is happiness. I think that it's different for different people, right? But find that thing for you. I would encourage your listener or viewer. What is going to make you happy? What is going to make you happy? And the last one, as you already probably can tell, creating. I love to create. I love it. So, yeah, I do the things that make me happy as much as I can do.
One of my mantras is happy people change the world.
Mm,
So let us all be happy and change makers.
I love that. Yes.
Okay, we are almost finishing. Time fly by. And I hope that who listen to us and watch us will be inspired by this episode. And if not yet, start change him or herself first and then the world around, each one at a time. Thank you. Please follow him. I will leave Cauveé's social media
Yes.
below
Cauveé,
in the description.
Cauvee website. We've got a new website that's going to be done here in a moment. It's inspirationengineer.com. And be on the lookout for the New York Times bestseller. I'm just going to put it out there. It's
Go
already going to be,
forward.
it's a done deal. The Evolution of Freedom will be a New York Times bestseller. So make sure you guys pick up that book as soon as it launches.
Already is. And I want one
Hey, we
with
got
your
you, Sally. Come on.
signature.
Of course. Facts.
Okay, thank you very much. This was lovely to have you. Thank you for accepting my invitation. And for sure, I will have you again. And all of you, remember, be happy and change the world.